The thing I find kind of fascinating, though, is with all this tech that you're talking about, all this data, we have so much data being thrown at people that no one looks at anything in 48 hours, 72 hours. 180 opened up all that opportunity to say, hey, Jason, you quoted 5 customers on Saturday. I don't see any follow-up. What's going on? Mm-hmm. Nowadays, people look at the data so late, I call it an autopsy report.
Welcome to the Strategy with Jason podcast. Tune in for everything you need to know to stay in the know regarding the automotive industry. Here's your host, Jason Harris.
Hey, what's going on, Podcast Nation? This is Jason Harris here, and thank you for joining me on another episode of Strategy with Jason. This is a fun edition. I'm live here at Canada's Used Car Week with the one, the only, the oh-so-famous Mr. Steven Pigozzo. Steven, what's up? How you doing, man?
I'm doing all right, man. How you doing? Good to see you in
I know
person
it's been a while,
this time.
right?
Last time was on a webinar with the younger fellows, a GM at a Chrysler store. I forget his name now.
Brock.
Yes. It was great.
That's right.
I really enjoyed what he had to say. So
That's right,
cool.
man.
Yeah,
Hey, you know what? It is cool. We're kind of back to normal. Mm-hmm. Feel normal to actually be out and like see people and say hi.
Somewhat normal. Somewhat normal. I think everyone's on a COVID schedule, COVID calendar.
We're on a new weird normal. Like if there was cars, maybe it'd be normal. Right?
Yes. Yeah. And as people say, there are no cars, and I say no. There's lots of cars. It's just there are the cars that you want.
Exactly. These are the cars that you want.
Yeah. The customer expectation index, as I like to call it.
Well, you know what? I think that's a cool direction. We're actually going to talk a little bit about that today. But for everybody out there that's watching and listening right now who don't know who you are, Stephen, or how you kind of got started in the industry, you know I love kicking off these podcasts with little origin stories.
Yes.
Because I'm always fascinated because I don't think anybody wakes up one day and goes, hey, I'm going to be in automotive.
Yeah.
Maybe you do. We'll find out.
Yeah.
So what is the origin story of how you got started in the automotive industry?
So the origin story is actually I was taking a trip on a bus ride in university at Wilfrid Laurier University. I was going up to the mall to put in a resume at Sam the Record Man because I had worked at Sam the Record Man back home in Sudbury. And I needed a job, to help pay for my schooling and whatnot. I was just finishing up football season. And as I went up the highway, I noticed the BMW store. And I was just like, oh, well, that's BMW. We didn't have BMW in Sudbury. We just had Benz, and I was a huge BMW fan. Mm-hmm. So I thought, well, I'm dressed up. I might as well go and drop off a resume. Maybe I could clean cars or something. Again, in university, I needed a job. So I actually went into that store. It was called BK Motors at the time, and walked in, dropped off a resume, and while I was waiting for the next bus, I was just in the showroom wandering around because they had some great product, and the GM came out. His name was AJ Mueller, and we talked. 2 years later, I started selling cars, and about a year or two after that, him and his wife started a software system called 180, and he brought it to my desk one day at Mini.
I think I've
and
heard
was
of that
just
company
like,
before.
Yeah, people have heard of it. It's now usually referred to as CDK or whatnot, but 180's been around for over 20 years. I was the first user of it back at Mini Waterloo in 2002. In March, delivered the first, retail delivery out of 180. Quote number 411 or 711, whatever it is. Now they're at 30 million or whatever. It's been a long time. It's a big system. And from that, I ended up doing my own consulting after working for the company for a little while. So the last decade, I just give clients out there that have a big CRM system like 180, I give them the opportunity to speak to a third party and physically have someone help implement the process. Because as you can imagine, after 20 years and about 4 million lines of code, there's a couple of items in there that people
might need to be changed.
Yeah, there's a couple things people could be using. So that's basically what I do.
Well, Stephen, I've heard you've been called the process man. Once or twice before.
Because I always say process doesn't care about your feelings. you know that, right?
You have amazing quotes when it comes to process. You really do. And I mean, let's talk about process, and especially right now. Right, lack of inventory. In some cases, other dealerships do have inventory. There are sometimes lack of employees. Definitely right now. I mean, the process is really being challenged right now by a lot of things coming out of the last 24 months with the pandemic and the explosion that is digital retailing. Yeah. And then boom, right into an inventory slump. And I got to be honest with you, Stephen, I'm not seeing overly the best process out there right now. And I find sometimes in our industry, I like to call it full belly syndrome. That's the term I like to use.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. Yeah,
When we're a little full, right? We're all making some money, and well, even though we're not getting a lot of cars, but what the cars are coming in, they're selling at great prices.
Yeah.
Then we kind of fall off the bandwagon a little bit with our process.
Yeah.
And coming from the process man himself, I'd love to get some ideas from you how we maintain consistency with our process.
Well, I think with maintaining consistency, you have to review. You always have to review. And we do it sort of at the store level on the dealership floor many times where we'll have sales meetings. But I've noticed even in the last little while, sales meetings, thanks to having a certain social distance and whatnot, a lot of retailers have stopped doing those. I've run into a lot of teams that's like, well, when's your next sales meeting? They're like, we'll see, probably Saturday. Okay, well, where do you hold it? Well, just down here on the floor. You never open up your appointments list. You want to see appointments. Anyway, it gets down to a lot of processes, of course, within a system like 180, which covers so many points of interest. I think a lot of times nowadays, especially with a system that's so antiquated as a lot of people say it is, I always tell them, when it comes to process, if you're not managing the system that tells you who your customers are, who they aren't, if you don't have a level of knowledge where I can say, well, these are called CRM alerts. That means the system that you've sold cars out of for the last 10 years is recognizing a VIN number that you previously sold connected to a name that it doesn't know. Now, with that comes software knowledge. Now, if you don't have the knowledge of your software and I give you the highest login, you think you can see that type of stuff. And that's where process and I guess you could say consultation in your process comes in. And I think we've obviously moved away from that in that sort of full belly attitude we have. We don't have a lot of costs in the dealership right now. We don't have a lot of inventory in stock that's taking money out of our pockets just on interest alone. And I think because we're also selling cars at a high profit, of course, and there's not a lot of product to go around, well, what are you left with? Well, everybody's good. Our bellies are full.
Yes.
Sono a posto, as we say in Italian, is just like, I'm in my place, I'm good. And so even getting a free assessment, I would say, is a difficulty at the moment for me right now. So when I talk about process, my process has to change. I have to do things differently. Hence, writing a book and letting people remember that I do sales training as well as just boring CRM stuff, because no one likes to talk process until there's a problem.
But I think that's kind of silly though, because look, all really good operators out there know that we are a people, process, and technology industry. That's what it is. All right,
100%.
That's literally what keeps.
I'm glad you said
the
people
years.
first. Thank you.
I did. I have to leave it at people.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Well, and it's true. I do put them in that order. Because I really think that we have to have our people. Right, we have to have the process, and the technology comes third. The technology should be there to serve the people in the process, not the other way around. Too often, I think over the last 24 months, I've seen people buy into like digital retailing products or other products as well, assuming that this process just kind of comes defined with it. And it's like, no, you have to define your people and your process first, and then work back towards the technology so you ultimately can achieve it.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree with you more. And at the last meeting I was in, I was being presented a piece of software that. I wasn't being asked my opinion on it, and that's fine. I was just curious because after seeing their presentation, I just asked, "Hey, who's your focus group?" They said, "The customer." I said, "Oh, okay, so you had like a bunch of customers tell you this stuff?" It's like, interesting. I said, "Why are you selling it to dealers?" And they're like, well, because dealers want this. I'm like, well, you're just saying your customers want it. But I just want my customers to get a payment from one of my people on the floor, right?
Yes.
And I find that's where I find that in the digital world, I'm sure you see this all the time. People buy software. I just don't know if they know what they purchase. I'd even
because
go
they
back,
did define their people and their process first.
Yes.
Right.
100%.
And that's what it is. So it's easy. It's easy to look. There's some great products out here, right?
But I know a bunch of them. Actually.
Yeah. So there's one right there. There's another one over there.
Yeah.
But if I don't define what my people and process is first, then I can't match the technologies to it. And a lot of people, I think it's like, I'm just going to hit the easy button. Like that tool over there is going to generate me more leads. That tool over there is going to help me engage with more leads. Right. And that tool over there is going to help me do more trade-ins.
Yeah.
But those are just tools. And to your point, I mean, 180 is a tool. An old tool, but a tool is still only as good as how well it's used. A set of wrenches in my hands are definitely not worth what they are in other people's hands.
No, 100%. And I said to a client recently, I'm like, you like the M5? He's like, yep. I'm like, 180 is an M5. You like the Tesla? He's like, yeah, I love the Tesla. It's even faster than an M5, isn't it? Right. So you want to go from your M5 to your Tesla.
Yep.
Well, all the data in your M5, that's kind of crap.
Yes.
Now you're going to load your Tesla, your brand new, shiny new Tesla that you bought for your sales team to utilize. You're going to just load it up with all that crap information because we all know crap in, crap out, right, in our business. Unfortunately, though, when you start talking about CRM and you're talking about organizing that data, you're usually talking about administration.
Yep.
And at an administrative level in the car business, as I just said to a coworker, ex-coworker, I guess not that long ago, before we had our conversation, I said, if you have ever been to a 180 dealership that uses 180 really, really well, you really want to upset the process, take away the admin girl for sales.
just
move her, or give her, give her the opportunity to train the next person to come in admin. And now you're talking about all kinds of administration that gets, we'll say, unraveled.
Sure.
But in a good software system like 180, it'll just keep running. It's not going to stop you from doing anything. And I find a lot of new software right now is trying to take you down a very direct path. And most of the time, the people talking about that sales process or that process software is always talking about the most simplified version of that process, which is, so-and-so is buying a car. Great. And they want to pick it up soon. Amazing. Let me guess, it's in stock? Right. And they're okay with the payment as well. Okay, awesome. And they just buy the car. It's like amazing. That's a wonderful,
so easy.
fantastical world. Yeah. But as a friend of mine in the journalism side of things, who's not a big car guy and he doesn't spend a lot of time at dealers, he was asking me about the customer satisfaction index that they keep referring to. And I said they should call it a customer expectation index. And he said, why do you say that? Yeah, I like it better because we end up trying to we put this carrot out in front of us. If we want to achieve this I'll say this fictitious idea of what customer expectation is and create something that apparently makes it so easy to buy a car. It's as easy as buying a cup of coffee. But yet at the same time, for some reason, the process of purchasing a vehicle, which might cost you $80,000, $110,000, is put in the same Google category as a Starbucks cup of coffee.
Which is ridiculous. It absolutely is ridiculous.
Bonkers, as you and I both know. So, when it comes down to it...
It's okay for processes to take time.
Yes, yeah. And
right? Because
exactly.
those generate experiences.
100%. And we keep talking about these personal experiences in the same mouthful as software. And the people who sell the software say, we really got to have a great customer experience, but here's a Tinder app for your customers to not stay in communication with your salesperson. They can't give a phone number. Yeah, just swipe and swipe and swipe. And unfortunately, yes, as a salesperson, if you're only, I couldn't imagine consulting a client via text message, like I tried to do earlier, I was mentioning. You're trying to consult someone on a text. Well, it's like trying to sell a car in a text. It's just one of those things where it just makes the process so slow, and then it makes our team seem not so competent. Well, you know what I mean? Because we're being hamstrung by the way we can communicate with our client. Which
and I think the key thing to know here is that the customer is the one that's defining the process now. Mm-hmm. See, but before, let's say I think the last 24 months has put the final coffin in what we call the sales process, and now dealerships are forced to provide buying options, and I always like to kind of translate this well to kind of like Best Buy. I love how Best Buy does this. It gives me 3 ways to buy something from Best Buy.
Yeah.
I can buy it online, go in and pick it up. Yeah. I can reserve it, go in, play with it, touch it, then buy it. Mm-hmm. Or if I'm really comfortable, I'll just buy the whole bloody thing and you can just deliver it to me. Right?
Yeah.
So it's, I bought my last truck via text message, so I think it's hilarious that you brought that up, right?
Yeah.
But that's because that's where I was. That's where I wanted to be met.
Yes.
I already knew what kind of truck I wanted. I just needed to know what were going to be the payments, what were the fees going to be. All right, when we can do this over delivery. I said, don't send me an email. Let me see. I have, 5,610 emails that I have not answered. Right. And I have 25 text messages that I haven't answered. All right. Well, one WhatsApp for some reason. Okay, so maybe WhatsApp would have been better. But I think that's the point, is that, we are a people and process industry. We say that, but then we don't want to meet the people where the people want to be met. We want them to meet us where we want to be met. And I think that's fundamentally changed, but I'd love to get your thoughts.
Well, I think it kind of goes into what you just kind of said about Best Buy. I think we're at that precipice here in the car business right now. We're at a point at which in 2022, we can communicate with each other in any myriad of ways.
Sure, anything you want.
But today is the era of opinion. I don't know if you know this. Someone's opinion is far, far more important than the ones and zeros and facts that I'm showing them. And that's the thing that I think blows my mind. It is scary. It is scary because you end up, just recently, I got an email from a head of a large group asking me if...
Did it start off with, I feel?
No, it actually started off with, if you're not sure what you're doing, please don't go in tomorrow. Okay. And I'm like, wow, after 20 years in the car business, that's a tough email to receive, because it wasn't their fault, right? Mm-hmm. But it was to me something that made me go, okay, well, in a wider breadth, there's no one within your group that can at least point to say, well, actually, yeah, no, we know, he knows what he's talking about. It's all good. So there, at a very high decision-making level, it's hard to have a conversation with people. And I think you've probably seen this as well. In all the conversations about, let's say, Carvana, for instance,
yep.
I think there's a lot of people in the business that, like me, went, oh, they're treating cars like stocks. This will be fun until they got to get rid of them. Because sales is easy until you have to deliver something.
Exactly.
And you and I both know that delivering a phone cover from Best Buy is a lot more difficult than a 3-ton truck.
Yes,
right?
Just a little.
And we all kind of saw, that happening, and we saw this group purchasing being done, these very wide-ranging grasps of vehicles that they're buying multiple cars at a time. And thanks to the internet, now everything's moving a lot faster. So there's going to be a number of dealers that are going to buy high and sell low in the next short period of time if they're not smart enough, right, about doing that stuff. And whether it's smarts or not, it doesn't really matter, actually, because the marketplace and what we have out there can move so quickly. Mm-hmm. So you keep going back to people and process.
That's it.
You can definitely say, yeah.
You can spend more time there, but for some reason, well, you know what it is? Because it's not sexy, Steven.
Well, exactly, right? It's not the conversation
technology,
you want.
The technology is way more sexier, but you do see, though, some of the best operators out there. And we know some amazing operators.
Yeah.
Right. They do focus so much on the process and the people.
Right.
And I do think, and I'll ask you this last question. I know we're getting towards the tail end of it, but I do believe that we're getting into now the new era of the industry where people are becoming more data conscious. Mm-hmm. All right. I mean, I know I've had many conversations over the years, and I'm sure you have too, where people have been kind of, let's call it data ignorance. Right, they're just ignorant of the data, or they don't believe it, or data mistrust. Like, I don't believe that's what my customers want, or I don't think this is what it is.
I don't believe our email capture rate is 60%. It's like, well, it might be 100% at delivery, but according to this is clearly 68%. But again, you end up with those roundabout conversations that I don't think really elicit too much. But at the same time, if you really take a step back, again, every single software maker, if they're not talking about your process with your people,
yes,
you know that's probably not going to be a software for, like, for instance, a lot of people love software that'll tell them what the value of the vehicle is, let's say a trade-in or whatnot. But the fact remains, you and I both know, because you ran a dealership, more than one, if I just get my salesperson to contact that customer once a year to find out where they're at, what their mileage is, what their intentions are, by the time the lease is due, the finance is coming due, or a few years has passed, we don't need anyone to tell us anything about our client or particularly their vehicle, right?
That's true.
But again, that's just process, and that's the grind. And
but
I just have
process
too many
that generates the experience.
100%. But if I don't
chasing this, right?
100%. But if you end up with managers right now, like 15 years ago when I was doing training at 180, we would create an email campaign for your lease finance renewal, and people would respond because it was 2005 and it was an email, and they got it and they could respond. Email. Today, I create letter campaigns for people because people don't answer emails, or I'll create a phone prompt, and it's far, far more effective. The thing I find kind of fascinating, though, is with all this tech that you're talking about, all this data, we have so much data being thrown at people. No one looks at anything in 48 hours, 72 hours. 180 opened up all that opportunity to say, hey, Jason, you quoted 5 customers on Saturday. I don't see any follow-up. What's going on? Mm-hmm. Nowadays, people look at the data so late, I call it an autopsy report. If Jason didn't message them back 4 weeks ago and you only figured that now thanks to your pivot table that your VP sent you, well, that's because you don't have enough time on the floor to just manage the basics. But people don't like doing basics because it's hard and it's grunt work. And who wants to follow up of the salespeople? Oh, they're not going to do it anyway. So let's all not do it, I guess. You know what I mean? And it's unfortunate because, again, it takes a little bit of work, yes. But you can't have... I've still run into a team that won't get a deal administrator.
Okay.
Yeah, no deal administrator. And it's not like they do 4 cars a month, you know what I mean? But to that owner, they don't see they don't see the positive in the and I mean, my God, like 20 years ago, I'd had to explain to people you should get a deal administrator.
100%.
But I was the first I'd run into in a while. But I'm also I lament the fact that so many people just never really got good 180 training. for instance, or they kind of been
Well, that's
given a
because I
system.
think so much of the training was focused on the technology, not the people.
I guess I guess you get back to process. And, we always end up back at process and people, right?
I know we can circle around these subjects so many times. We always kind of end up at the end. Hey,
That's
look,
so true.
I know it's always the tail end of it, but for everybody out there that's watching and listening right now, Stephen, that would like to connect with you, learn more about you, or even follow along with your journey, what's the best way to connect with you?
Best way to connect with me would probably find me on LinkedIn. It's not really too hard to search my name. It starts off like the animal, P-I-G, Pigozzo. But my book has been getting a bit of traction. It's called Buy or Die, which I'm sure you know that. Don't have to explain that sales axiom to you, although some people now in the business, they're like, why do you call it Buy or Die? I'm like,
wow.
Okay, this is a sales axiom. It's been around for a while. You could definitely check out my website as well.
I said someone the other day, bell to bell, and they had no idea what I was talking about. It was like, what?
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. It's all this verbiage we keep throwing out at people.
It's our
got to stop doing it.
Hey, if you guys are out there watching this right now, you make sure you hook up with Steven, follow him on LinkedIn. Absolutely awesome. Hey, man, thanks so much.
Thank you so much, man.
Time.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure, bud. Thanks.
Thanks for tuning in to the Strategy with Jason podcast with your host, Jason Harris. Don't want to miss new content? Be sure to check out the full podcast library at strategywithjason.com to stay in the know. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Happy podcasting.